first happened near the Defence Minister's house and a busy market square. It was also close to the city's heavily fortified green zone, which is home to government buildings and embassies. Gunfire followed the explosion. There's been no word on any casualties, but the Defence Minister tweeted, "Do not worry, everything is fine." Let's go live now to Charlotte Bellis in Kabul. They did sound like quite large explosions, didn't they, Charlotte?
Well, just as you were introducing this story, there was another loud explosion, and there has been sporadic gunfire, machine gun fire for a number of hours now. We understand that 3 attackers have been killed, 30 people have been evacuated, and that special forces remain on the scene outside the Defence Minister's home. Now, this started at around 8 p.m. My colleagues were actually on their way to dinner when about 300 metres ahead of them this explosion went off. Their car was hit by a shockwave. They saw sparks, they saw a large plume of smoke, and they managed to get out of the situation. The Defence Minister appears to have been the target of this. He wasn't home at the time, neither was his family. As you said, he tweeted afterwards saying, "Do not worry, everything is okay." More gunfire. Do not worry, everything is okay. But he's only recently come into this job, but he was picked for it because he has a lot of experience on the battlefield. He's been fighting for more than 40 years with the Soviets, and then he fought the Taliban once before under Ahmad Shah Massoud. Now, to move further south to another very tense situation in Helmand province in Lashkar Gah. Now, fighting has been ongoing in the city there for 4 days now, but today residents told us that it was the worst. It was constant gunfire and airstrikes. The Taliban pushed in on Saturday, and then the Afghan Air Force, the US Air Force have been conducting airstrikes. Special forces have been there, but they didn't make much progress. And now the general of the army in Helmand put out a voice note today to residents saying, "I'd like you all to evacuate because we want to launch a large-scale operation." Here is our report on Lashkar Gah.
Lashkar Gah, the capital of Helmand province, and in the crosshairs of the Taliban. After fighting government forces for weeks on its outskirts, the armed group could be on the brink of taking its first city since the US began its military drawdown. The Taliban published videos of themselves in the centre of Lashkar Gah and at the main market, asserting they had control of most of the city.
The enemy is stuck in some places of the city, like their intelligence officers, police and governor's compound. But our Taliban are at every corner of the city.
Now the Afghan military is trying a new strategy. After 4 days of fighting with its most elite special forces and pounding the city with airstrikes, it is asking all people to evacuate the city.
I'm leaving here. All the people have left. There's bombing from the air and the Taliban are on the ground.
The army commander for Helmand made the request in a voice note that was quickly spread among those still in Lashkar Gah.
It will be very hard fighting. We will not leave the Taliban alive at any cost. I know it will be very hard for you, and it was a very hard decision for me too. I don't want to hurt my people. Please forgive us if you will get this place, and please evacuate as soon as possible.
Analysts in Kabul say the strategy is flawed.
Telling the population to go, not giving them an exact time frame, and then bombing the hell out of the place and leaving the place as a terrible battleground, in the same way that we saw pictures of Kabul back in the 1990s.
If tens of thousands of people in Lashkar Gah heed the general's warning, many will head 3 hours east to Kandahar city, the closest city and still held by the government. 150,000 people have already been displaced there after fighting last month, but it too is contested by the Taliban.
The people fleeing their villages can't find a place to sleep, not even in tents. The situation is so bad. We want both the Taliban and the government to stop fighting. For God's sake, stop the fighting.
In the western city of Herat, the situation is equally fluid. Special forces arrived to bolster the military and allied fighters after the Taliban cut off the city's airport last week. Even then, for a brief period, the Taliban got within 3 kilometres of the city centre.
So, Charles, tell us what the situation is around the country with regards to the Taliban and their progress.
Well, they're certainly putting pressure on a lot of provincial capitals. In the last about month or so, the Taliban have taken a huge amount of rural land. They're controlling more than half the districts around the country. And so now they're really starting to, now that they've got all this rural area, they're starting to focus on the cities and really tighten them off. A lot of the provincial capitals, they're kind of prodding at the outskirts and really stretching the Afghan military's resources, and then they're able to take a lot of those gains militarily and the territory they're gaining and take those gains back to the negotiating table.